Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I've got the tissues out here. Ooh, how do you start a video like this? So I've been very open on here, on my socials, about my journey with grief. For those of you who are like coming across this the first time, in 2021, my mom was diagnosed with a really aggressive form of non-smoker's lung cancer. And in 2022, literally like a year from diagnosis, she passed away. And it is 2024 now. And on Monday, it will be 2 years since my mom passed away. And 6 months after she had passed, I did this video talking about grief and what it looks like at 6 months, because what I'm learning, because the grief process never really ends, is that one, the grief process never really ends, but also like it transforms. I have been reached out to by a few people who have said that they are going through their own grief and don't know how to express it and feel kind of isolated and feel very alone. And me sharing my story and my feelings have really helped them feel less alone. And I do know that talking about this is difficult. It's not easy for me, and the reason that I started talking about it was because I felt so alone and so isolated. So I do want to do kind of like an update. It's been 2 years. My everyday life, right after my mom passed, probably for the first year, I would look in the mirror and I did not recognize myself. I was so anxious. I would wake up anxious. The literal first month after my mom passed, I was still living at home, and rooms still smelled like her. Her things were still all around, like we hadn't gone through a lot of stuff because it was really difficult. So I would wake up anxious. I would have dreams that my mom was there. I would wake up and she wasn't. And I had this, and I still kind of feel this, but like this feeling of like, how am I supposed to live now that my mom is gone? Losing my mom was like losing my mom and losing my best friend. And the person I would go to for things was gone. So I would wake up anxious that somebody else that I loved was going to die. I woke up anxious that my dad was gonna die, that my best friends were gonna die, that I was gonna die. I don't know how to explain, but I was so anxious. I would literally wake up, and I used to work remotely, and I would log on to work at 9, and by 11 o'clock, if I didn't take a 30-minute break to do like yoga where I could actually breathe, like I wouldn't be able to function. My first 6 months after losing my mom, I lost a lot of weight. I just could not find it in me to eat, because when I'm sad, when I'm depressed, when I'm anxious, I can't keep things down. I have a nervous stomach to begin with, and I either will throw something up or feel like I have to go to the bathroom. It took over my life. I was afraid to be alone, and anytime I was alone with myself, it just felt like the walls were closing in on me. It was really hard. And I watched that video that I made a year and a half ago, yesterday night before going to bed. And like, my life looks completely different now. It never gets better, but it gets easier. And you know, one of the kind of incredible things, I guess, about where I am 2 years out, is that new memories have been coming back to me. Memories that I completely forgot about with my mom. And now my new fear is that like I'm never gonna remember that memory again. So I carry around a book, and every time I have this strong memory, I write it down. My day-to-day looks way more quote unquote normal, knowing it will never be normal ever again. Coping, I don't really know if I have found the perfect way to cope. I think for me, it's way easier to care about other people and put other people before myself than it is to put me first. I think if I think too long about myself or put myself at the forefront of things, it is still not perfect, not great. So I definitely feel like my coping has been hiding a little bit. I have great friends who I have been so fortunate to have with me through this whole journey, but I do feel like now, like 2 years in, I can't really just call them and cry like I used to. I know if I said that to them, they'd be mad at me, but there is this feeling of being burdensome. So when these things come about, it's usually right before I go to bed. And lately, what has been plaguing me is, so my mom was only in hospice for 36 hours. It was really, really quick. She got into hospice, she got off all of her maintenance medicine. I started taking care of her. I contracted COVID while taking care of her, so I was battling COVID and caretaking for my mom. And it's been those caretaking memories that have been coming back. And it's a mix because, you know, I took on a lot of responsibility at that time. My dad wasn't doing well. My brothers didn't know what to do. And I felt like I had to be mom, you know, because mom wasn't really here anymore. When she was in hospice, she was pretty much asleep most of the days. And then she would wake up and she would have these moments of clarity. And she would talk to us. And then she would go back to sleep. And I would have to wake her up every 4 hours, and then it ended up being every 2 hours to give her a morphine dose. And she would wake up a little bit, and sometimes she would talk and sometimes she wouldn't. And I promised her in the hospital that I would stay by her side because I didn't want her to leave this world alone. And I stuck by my promise. I slept in her recliner next to her. And I listened to her breathe for 36 hours. And when she stopped, it was so quiet. So before bed is usually when these feelings hit me. I think it's because like it's when I finally get to turn off my brain. I keep really busy. I've been keeping really busy for the last year and a half. I found that that's when I'm able to it's like run away from my feelings. But at night, when those things hit me, I really just cry through them. I think I wish there was like some advice I could give you other than like it's okay to cry through it, but there's something so healing and so cathartic about crying. Sometimes I cry until I can't breathe. Sometimes it's just a little cry. My dad was the only one out of my family that I ever really talked to about mom after she passed. It was just really hard for everybody. And especially I feel like on my brothers who were really dependent on her. I thought that I was coping by leaving home and starting my life where I could just focus on me. And that ended up being like really hard in its own way. The only person you want to talk to when you don't know what you're doing with your life is your mom. Or at least for me, it is still. But I'm coping. I mentioned that like grief is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And it still is. It's something that nobody really understands unless you've gone through it yourself. About 9 months after I lost my mom's brother, my uncle, passed away suddenly. I remember being at my cousin's place when she got the call that her dad, my uncle, had been brought to the hospital because he was doing some yard work and he had collapsed. And she was worried, and I wasn't. I remember telling her, like, I've been where you are, but trust me, like, he's in the best place that he could be right now. He's at the hospital, like, the doctors are there for him. And within a week, he had passed away. That was my godfather. That was one of the last living connections I had to my mom. And that was another family member that I just don't have now. And like, I was never super close to my uncle. Him and my mom grew up in really difficult circumstances, and I found it hard to connect with him. I know he was coping in his own way, but I remember getting that phone call. I was in therapy and my brother called me, and I said to my therapist, I said, I really hope Alex isn't calling to tell me bad news about my uncle, because we were talking about my uncle and all the things that I had brought up about my mom. And she was like, okay, well, I'm here. I hope it's not that, but I'm here. And I got off the phone and I walked upstairs to the apartment, and he answered, and he said he's gone. And that was hard because I was grieving somebody I never really got the chance to know, but somebody who I love. When you're a kid and you're like with uncles and aunts, sometimes, at least in my case, like I never really got close to my uncles and aunts. I can't even tell you what my uncle did for a living. My cousins had made like this crossword because he loved crosswords, and that's how I found out what his job was. Like, I just didn't know. We were kids. And then by the time we grew up to adults, we didn't spend that much time together, and my mom got sick. You know, it really, really like stuck with my uncle. So like we spent a lot more time with them, with my cousins, with my uncle, with my aunt, when my mom got sick. And when she passed away, I called him and he came over. So then I lost him, and my mom's other brother, he lives in the South, and he came up to visit, and I hadn't seen him in 9 months since my mom had passed. And I think the thing about grief is you're so focused on grieving yourself, you don't recognize everybody else who's also grieving. When I saw my uncle's face, I realized that in isolating myself in my grief, I was not able to be there for him because he looked. My mom has 2 other living brothers, but we don't speak to them. We're not on speaking terms with either of them. So I just have my uncle left. And he's like 14 years older than my mom. And it does feel like I'm running out of time. One of the things my mom kept saying the last day she was alive, when she was in and out of consciousness, was that, like, she kept saying love is the most important thing in the world. And I get it. 3 months after my uncle passed, my mom's best friend, and someone who had been a second mother to me, I found out she was really, really, really ill. There was extenuating circumstances on that side where we weren't really speaking much. She was really there for me when my mom passed, but we just like didn't keep in touch. I think it was hard on my end, it was hard on her end, and then there were the extenuating circumstances. But my best friend, I remember her calling me and being like, my mom is really sick. And then right after Thanksgiving last year, she passed away. In some ways, I don't feel like I've even really processed my mom's death because I've had so many that have come after hers. I went to visit my mom's best friend, Holly. I went to visit her, maybe like, she was in hospice for a few weeks, so I went to visit as soon as she had been put in hospice. And we brought my mom's favorite blanket and we put it at the foot of her bed. And she kept saying, that's Sandy. I'm gonna go see Sandy. In the course of a year, I lost 2 moms. If anyone can speak on grief, I'm a pretty good candidate because it just keeps happening. I am not the same person that I was in August of 2022. Before my mom had passed, before my mom was even to the point where we knew she was gonna pass, but my mom could still walk. I'm not the same person. And I lost myself for an entire year until September of last year in talking to my therapist. I also recognize that I have also come to the conclusion, was guided there, that I have to forgive myself for the things that I did immediately following my mom's passing, the person I was, because I was not myself. I can honestly say, if me, Megan, who's like as healed I think as I'm going to get, really, if I was put in those same positions, I would not act the same way that I did. Grief is a powerful thing. Losing somebody so close shatters your world, and you have to put back together the pieces. And it's easy for me to be like, I look back on who I was in that first year and be like embarrassed of myself, but I have learned to be gentle with myself and recognize that I was just trying to survive. And it's hard, like it's so hard. It's still so hard. I can genuinely say in my life right now, like, I'm happy. Happy, you know, I'm still like in a late stage capitalist hellscape. But in like my personal life, like I have surrounded myself with people that love and support me, that are there for me. And I'm so grateful for them. I can say that my relationship with my dad is complete 180 from when my mom was still here. My dad and I did not have a great relationship for a while, and we promised my mom we'd work on it, and we did. And my dad is the most important person. I hope my dad knows how much I love him. My brothers, I would do anything for them. And my friend Elizabeth, I would do anything for her, because that's my family. My best piece of advice, my piece of wisdom. First, I hope you never go through anything like this. But if you do, you are not alone. Ever. And if I could do it all over again, I would really, 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 really lean heavily on those people. I would have leaned heavier on my mom's friend. I would have just connected more, because those connections make your loved one feel like she's still there. And I'm trying to do that more now. I'm trying to make space and make time for everybody, because I want to, you know, be with people I love while I have time on this planet. I hope I can look back on this in maybe a year or two when I make another video and feel even better about where I am and feel like I'm honoring my mom in different ways. Yeah, guys, anyway, that's this video. Thank you guys for watching. And I hear you, I see you, and if you need me, you can message me, you can leave a comment and I'll message back. But just know that you're not alone in all of this.